my thoughts on the failed Max Crosby trade. So let me just get our banner updated here. The failed Max Crosby trade. Enter. Ticker. There we go. Okay, so let's dive in. So how did we come to this? Well, the reason I'm talking about it is that my co-host Mike and I, he likes to send me attachments like through Facebook Messenger about the goings on in the NFL, and so, which I appreciate. However, sometimes he sends me information from sources that have a different take than my take on a situation. So, full disclosure, I like the Baltimore Ravens. I am Jim Harbaugh was a coach at Michigan for almost 10 years. His brother John Harbaugh was the coach in Baltimore for like 15 years. He was the longest tenured coach in the NFL. And like I follow that tree of coaches. I respect that tree of coaches. I like that tree of coaches. They coach football and they play football in a way that I like to watch football be played. So, full disclosure, I'm pro Harbaugh. Okay. So here we have a situation where the Harbaughs are not involved anymore, right? So John Harbaugh leaves, right? I brought that up because I wanted to tell you that I'm predisposed to liking the Baltimore Ravens. So they did hire former Michigan coach and Jesse Minter, so I'm still going to be pro Baltimore, and what have you. So what we have here is a pretty unusual situation from a number of different angles. Let's break it down. So we've got two teams, the Raiders and the Ravens. The Raiders have a star pass rusher who's good at everything and who's on the trade block because he's still exceptionally productive. He is, I don't think he's 30 years old quite yet. And the market for pass rushers is either catching up to or surpassing what he's being paid on his current deal. So, good time to trade for Max Crosby. And the Raiders, even though they would love to keep a player of his caliber, are in a position where they know they're going to be taking a quarterback. They have some other young pieces on offense, and it's the right time to build around Fernando Mendoza and not to keep a 29-year-old pass rusher on the roster. So they were shopping him. And so of all the teams in the NFL, Baltimore offers the best deal for Max Crosby. So 2 first-round picks for Max Crosby. No team in the NFL offered that much. So I think that should be said. So of all the teams in the NFL, Baltimore wanted Max Crosby the most, which I think is strange because I don't believe that Baltimore has traded their own first-round pick in I think they've done it once in their 30-year NFL history. So this goes against type. And so speculation has been that this was a directive from the owner of the Baltimore Ravens to their GM, Eric DeCosta, to go out and acquire some kind of difference-making player for the team, and they settled on Max Crosby. Don't know if that's true. I think it more likely than just, the Baltimore Ravens just randomly decided to trade for Max Crosby. Okay, so why would they do that? So to give up 2 first-round picks is quite out of character for them. The two agree on the trade. So, of course, any kind of trade involving a player, the player has to pass a physical in order to have the trade be approved from both sides and go to the league office. So the Ravens put Max Crosby through a workout. They say that he fails the physical, which basically, from what I can tell, basically means that they took a look at his knee and did not agree with the Raiders' assessment of how far along Max Crosby was in his prognosis. Okay. Then the Ravens back out. So then, and this I find to be really interesting, the narrative of them backing out of the trade becomes, ooh, this is in bad faith. You agreed to a trade and then you backed out of it. Okay. So in that time frame, the Ravens pivot away from Max Crosby to the next best pass rusher that they can go out and acquire, who is Trey Hendrickson. And they signed Trey Hendrickson for a couple of $1 million less per year than Max Crosby would have cost. And of course, they get their picks back. Okay. So there appears to be some kind of conspiracy theory brewing around why Baltimore chose this sequence of events. So anytime that there's a situation like this, I like to go with Occam's razor, which is the simplest answer, is probably the most likely. And to me, the simplest answer is the Ravens examined Max Crosby's knee. It wasn't where they felt comfortable with trading 2 first-round picks for him. They backed out of the trade, which is why we have the physicals in the first place, is so that teams can't trade injured players. And then they pivoted to their next best option and got that deal done immediately. So I'm not, hey, what's up, Michael? How you doing, buddy? I don't understand what Baltimore is supposed to have done wrong in this situation outside of we agree to the trade, but now we're not going to do it. Which seems like the most recess 4th grade thing that any like billionaires could hold each other to. Like, I suppose, I don't know how this would work, but like if somehow it feels like the Ravens were accused of going through all these hoops in order to drive the price of Trey Hendrickson down further. And I don't understand how that's possible, because if you trade for Max Crosby, Trey Hendrickson becomes the number 1 pass rusher on the market, and therefore he has more leverage. They're like, oh, go out and find someone better than me now. We can't. You can't. You know, if this was reversed, you know, you wouldn't be like, oh, Trey Hendrickson, we want to sign you to a big money contract to come play in Baltimore. Well, I don't want to sign for that little. Oh, okay, well, we'll trade for Max Crosby then. You know, like you could have done these things in the other order. So because of the order that these events took place in, I'm having a hard time understanding how Baltimore was, quote unquote, manipulating the market to drive Trey Hendrickson's price down. And like, it's possible if the Ravens were the highest bidder, even before trading. It's possible if the Ravens were the highest bidder, even before trading for Crosby. So what you're saying is that the Ravens were the highest bidder for Hendrickson, and then they pivoted to Crosby so that Hendrickson would drop his price so that they would pivot back to him? Is that what you're saying? If that's the case, then is this even okay? So let's assume possible, sure, absolutely, it's possible, right? Let's say that scenario is exactly what happened. That is, quote unquote, wrong to do. If an agent can come to a team and say, My guy's an all-pro. He's a Pro Bowler. He's led the league in sacks the last 2 years. He's all these great things and drives the price up. Can teams not create a situation like this to say, well, we also have other options? We're actively participating in those other options vis-a-vis the trade for Max Crosby. Maybe you should come down on your price. And so let's say that all of these like machinations or whatever, like this wheeling and dealing that was done here by the Baltimore Ravens was the absolute worst thing that they could have done as far as people are concerned. What they're getting out of this is the worst of two pass rushers for like $2 million less than they're paying the other guy, right? So like it's a lot of work for not a ton of payoff, in my opinion, right? So like Max Crosby, let me see if I can bring up his contract here. Max Crosby is a Raider. Where are they? There they are. Max Crosby, his cap number is $35.79 million. So if he is a trade, either pre or post June 1st, he is going to be traded for $30 million and change. Okay, so let's say $30 million. So then if we go back and see what, where are the Ravens? There they are. Trey Hendrickson is going to cost, $15 million. What does that mean? Oh, I see. His cap numbers goes up. So here are Trey Hendrickson's cap numbers. He has 15 million. He counts as 15 million against the cap this year, 18 million in 2027, then 35 in 2028 with no more guaranteed money, and then 34 in 2029 with no more guaranteed money. So it's really a 2-year deal, right? The 2 first-round picks are worth a ton, right? Which is why I don't understand why, for a team like Baltimore, who has hardly, if ever, traded first-round picks for players, why they would all of a sudden go out and do 2. So, it does kind of speak to me that this came from the very highest level in Baltimore's organization, as opposed to like Eric DeCosta basically saying, "Oh, let's mix things up and just go trade for Max Crosby." So, but I'm trying to figure out why what the Ravens did is quote unquote dirty pool. So if they straight up manipulated the Raiders, is that in what the NFL is, where all these teams are competing with one another? Is that a bad thing? Is that we don't do business this way, kind of a thing? And I don't mean if I was the general manager, would I consider that to be the inappropriate way to conduct business? What I'm saying is, in the actual NFL, do the GMs do this to one another, or do they keep everything above board, so that we don't devolve into a fantasy football style league where no one can make trades with one another because no one trusts anything anybody has to say? So I don't understand. It all seems to be centered around the Ravens saying whether or not Max Crosby's knee is healthy. So Max Crosby had surgery on his knee 6 weeks ago. It's just not a lot of time after that cleanup procedure I don't know, I guess I'm not a doctor, but it doesn't feel like a lot of time to be able to warrant saying, oh, his knee looks totally cleaned up and on headed in the right direction. They also consulted the Dallas Cowboys team doctor, who either performed the surgery or I guess you can call other teams' doctors and be like, hey, this is a situation. Would you mind taking a look at it? And that guy didn't say anything that assuaged the Baltimore Ravens' concerns about Max Crosby's knee. Like, where is the person in this situation that's like, no, Max Crosby's knee is completely fine and looks great, and he's going to be ready to go in week 1. He's going to look like Max Crosby, of 2 years ago or whatever, right? Like 6 weeks after surgery, Crosby was never going to look fully good by medical staff. Okay, so is that also a part of the problem? Like, because of the timing of the surgery, there's no way that he could pass a physical, right? I mean, does that make sense? Like, if Max Crosby got surgery in January, even if his knee looked really good 6 weeks later while he's trying to pass this physical, is 6 weeks enough time for anybody to be like, oh no, we're completely confident in the quality of his knee healing? Right? So if it's not, and both of these teams agree to this trade, then from the Raiders' perspective, they'd have to be like, well, we're going to be able to get Max Crosby traded and off of our books when there should be no way that he could pass this physical. That seems also underhanded. And from the Ravens' point of view, it would be like, oh, well, we're going to run Max Crosby through this physical and have our doctors look at him. And then with full knowledge that we intend to pull out of this trade because we know that he can't pass the physical because it's been 6 weeks since he had a surgery. So, I mean, like, I don't understand why people are saying the Raiders were angels in this situation, and the Raiders were angels in this situation, and the Ravens were jerks. The only determining factor in those two things appears to be that Baltimore backed out of the trade, which I don't think is enough to basically say you're being jerks. You're not conducting business appropriately as an organization. So here's another thing. If Max Crosby's knee is fine, why has he not been traded to a team other than Baltimore? Apparently, Dallas was in on this trade for Crosby, and they had offered what I heard was a 1 and a 2, the same thing they gave up for Quinnen Williams. So if that's the case, and their doctor was also consulted about this situation by Baltimore, why hasn't Dallas gone out and acquired Max Crosby if he's fine? Why hasn't any other team in the NFL called up the Raiders and been like, oh, you were going to trade him for 2 first-round picks and they backed out. Now the price has to be lower. The price has to be lower now because the team that was bidding the most backed out. So now you cannot trade him for 2 first-round picks. Right? And if you're the Raiders, wouldn't you still want to move Crosby off your books to make sure that you could sign all the players that they went out and signed and have those picks to help support Fernando Mendoza? I think a 1 and a 2 helps Fernando Mendoza a lot. Not as much as 2 1s, sure. But I mean, like, it could. I mean, like, it depends on who you pick at those spots. And it gets Crosby off your books and gives you a little cap flexibility. And, like, maybe it's the right time to move on from a player like Max Crosby. I don't know. But, like, I have a hard time believing that the Baltimore Ravens weren't above board in this situation. Like, I can't remember. I mean, you hear about players failing physicals all the time, and then teams are not held to this kind of standard for how they conducted themselves. So I'm curious as to what singular thing Baltimore is supposed to have done or not done that led to this kind of, like, media firestorm of, oh, this looks bad. The optics are bad here. I mean, to me, it looks like we had a deal in place. Like if I was buying a car and I was going to send you 2 first round picks for a car, and the transmission on the car doesn't work, and I said, well, I'm not going to trade you 2 first round picks for this car with a bad transmission. And they're like, well, and the guy's like, well, I told you that the transmission was bad. Yeah, but it's so bad that like I don't think that the car will run the way that you said it will. Like I'm looking at the transmission right now, and you looked at the transmission and you said it's going to run all right. You just need to clean it up a little bit. And I'm looking at it like I think that this needs a complete overhaul in order to be able to run correctly again. So I this isn't what you said it was. I'm backing out of the trade. I'm not going to give you 2 first round picks for this car. And then they're like, well, you said that you would. No, you know, so like I don't get it. You know, I don't understand why this seems to have taken up the kind of narrative space that it has in NFL media. I mean, is it possible that there was just little else to talk about? I don't know. But it just does not feel like this is something worthwhile to blame the Baltimore Ravens for how they conducted themselves over the course of this trade. So, anyways, I'm going to do a mock draft here for the Lions just because I love doing mock drafts. So, if you guys don't know, my channel is called Building the Pride, and largely we talk about the Lions. My co-host and I were talking about the Max Crosby trade the other day, and he and I have very different takes. He does not like Baltimore. He doesn't like the Harbaughs. He doesn't like Baltimore, and I do, you know. So I think he sends me these little like clips and stuff, and I didn't appreciate it. So I just thought I'd get my feelings out on the channel here. Okay, so let's take a look at this draft that we're doing here, just real quick for the Lions. Mendoza goes 1, makes a lot of sense. Ooh, Mekhi Lemon went at 6. That's new. Probably not likely. Sonny Styles is off the board. Freeling went to the Ravens. That makes a lot of sense. So the Lions are left with, in my opinion, the worst case scenario here. So if you listen to Eric Schlitt over at Pride of Detroit, I would become familiar with the name Blake Miller. Eric is under the impression that Blake Miller could very well be the pick at 17 regardless. I don't know that the Lions need to take a tackle in this class. Like, and the reason why is Taylor Decker retires. Everyone in Detroit fandom thinks, oh, we got to replace Decker. Okay. Hard to argue. Then they go out and they sign Cade Mays and Larry Borum on day 1 of free agency. Okay. So Cade Mays, pencil him in as your starter. So right now the line looks like question mark, Christian Mahogany, Cade Mays, Tate Ratledge, and Penei Sewell. That's 4 strong on the offensive line. And we haven't ruled out the possibility that Larry Borum might just be the starter. You know? Now, here, I don't think that there's a clear-cut blue chipper that fits the Detroit Lions. If there was Sonny Styles or Caleb Downs somehow were to weirdly fall to the Lions here, I would take them. Also, Arvell Reese, if for some reason he were to fall, I would also draft Dermod McCoy. At this spot, Keldrick Falk, I think, would be a real nice fit for the Lions. So those are kind of the guys that I'm thinking about. Now, you could take Vega Ione here. 6'4", 320, 32 and 3/4 inch arms, 10.5 inch hands. Had a nice combine. Known for exceptional strength, leverage, and run blocking, and elite pass pro consistency, Ione's tape shows physical dominance and reliability in sustained drive. Scouts note that refining pad level and hand timing against technically astute defenders are areas for continued growth. That says to me that he just needs to get a little bit better to be like an all-pro level guard. So if you drafted Ione, you're basically saying this is a clear upgrade over Christian Mahogany. He probably is. Is that what you want to do with your first round pick? I think there's a number of other ways you could go. If you were going to draft a tackle here, I think you have three choices. You have Caden Proctor from Alabama, Caleb Lomu, and Blake Miller. I also really like Max Hennicher from Arizona State, but I don't know that he feels more like a guy that needs a season to develop, and I don't know that the Lions can give him that right now. So the problem is that there's so many good players on the board that I have a hard time wanting to stick and pick here. So if we offered up a trade, I could get 27 and 58. I could trade out of the first round, which I don't want to do, or I could get a 1, a 2, and a 4 if I traded down to 30. And I think I'm going to try, for the fun of it, I'm just going to try and trade down to 30 and just see how the board falls. So there goes Ione. There goes Proctor. There goes Lomu. So I want one of Miller or Hennicher here. Okay, so I get my pick. I'll take Blake Miller. Now, the only problem is Blake is a right tackle. So now we have two right tackles. So I don't know if they intend to switch him to left or to move Penne over there, but I would assume it would be to switch the rookie to the left side. So I'm going to take Blake Miller here. Yoink. And then we're going to see kind of how the board falls. Maybe we'll only go through round 4. Oh, there goes a Hennicher. I think it's unusual that the Lions haven't, quote unquote, oh geez, that's a bummer, ruled out taking or having Larry Borom be the starter. It just seems so unlikely to me. I'm going to take Lee Hunter here. But Drew, we have a 3-tech. You're right, we do. And then they let Levi Ruzarike has his last year, is on the team for like he has one more year on his contract. Tyleik Williams is going to move over and take DJ Reed's spot. And I just don't know that there's a ton of depth at the defensive tackle spot, especially a 3 technique. They let go of Josh Paschal, who's played a little bit inside. And this guy just feels like a really, really solid defensive lineman, even if it's just for a rotation. Plus, we get some value because we're taking him 10 picks higher than what he was supposed, or 10 picks lower than he was supposed to go. And we have another pick that we can invest where we want to. So that was kind of our luxury pick. Okay, let's see. We could take Keelan Rutledge. That might also be an upgrade over Christian Mahogany. Let's see. Top 10 guard nationally in 2025. Elite run blocking and pass pros. Primary strengths lie in high-level intelligence and physical resilience, which allowed him to start 25 consecutive games after his recovery from some injury. Must be. Oh, December 23, he returned from a severe car accident in December 2023 that required multiple surgeries and a PICC line to treat a life-threatening infection. Oh, my God. That's crazy. I'm just not in love with many other players on the board right here. Don't need a wide receiver. Could use a linebacker, but I'd like a coverage linebacker, and that's not Trotter. I like Elijah Surratt quite a bit, but I guess I'm going to take Kamari Ramsey. We have had some. Kirby Joseph did put out an Instagram post that said that he was like looking forward to things, but like we've had nothing in the way of like actual news about his knee, nor have we seen him actually try and go out and play football. I think those are going to be, I don't know, pretty important data points when it comes to figuring out whether or not the Lions have a need at safety. Brian Branch should, I think Brian Branch will end up spending like the first month or 6 weeks of the season on NFI, and then we'll get him back and he'll start working back toward looking like he was prior to the injury, but it might be 2027 by the time we see that player. So I'm of the opinion, draft wise, the Lions should look to invest in each layer of the defense, like another pass rusher, to play opposite Aiden Hutchinson, a coverage linebacker to play with Jack Campbell, and a safety, or if there's like I don't know if there are more than one elite corner in this class, but a corner that can play. That can be a building block, because I don't know that DJ Reed is going to be a long-term solution in Detroit. And with the weirdness surrounding Terrion Arnold down in Florida and his like injury history, plus like the lack of production that he's had in the first 2 years, I don't know that he's going to be a second contract player either. So you could understand, with injuries to both safeties and the questions at corner, that the Lions might be trying to rebuild their secondary for like the third time under this regime already. So let's see. I'll take Bud Clark here from TCU. Playmaking instincts. So like he feels like from the description makes him sound like a Kirby Joseph kind of player. All right, I'll take Justin Jolie here because the tight end room under Drew Petzing is going to need some work. There's this guy, Markel Bell from the University of Miami, 6'9", 346, 36 and 3/8-inch arms. His arms are 3 feet long. That's a shocking number. Like, you would have tackle-wise on the roster at this point, you would have, well, who did we pick? Did we pick a tackle? Yeah, we picked Miller, right? Yeah. So, if you took Bell here, I would imagine that's just like a sub-package player that you're looking to develop. But, like, you would have Sewell, Miller, Giovanni Manu, Larry Borum, and then this guy on the roster. Like, I just feels like too many tackles. I would be completely fine cutting Giovanni Manu at this point. I just don't know that the Lions are all right with that. I don't really like these options here at all. I'm going to take Oscar Delp to be another tight end in the rebuilt tight end room. We were playing 3 third stringers last year at the end. Who knows what Sam Laporta looks like coming back. Brock Wright is another year older and coming off of an injury. So there could be some questions. This might be a good year to invest a couple of picks at tight end in the mid round. So let's just take a look at our draft here real quickly. We took Blake Miller, Lee Hunter, a pair of safeties, and a pair of tight ends. And we have some other picks. We have 5 picks still, but like I think that if they did something like this, I'd be pretty happy with that because it's building depth on the roster on cost controlled moves. And like I think that those positions are relevant for the team. But that doesn't mean that they're going to do it. So anyways, I just wanted to start off Monday with a quick chat about the Max Crosby trade. We'll do a quick mock draft to just kind of see what that might look like and start learning some names. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a great week. Stay safe, stay warm out there. I'll be back on Friday at noon for the regular show. So if you can join us, I'd appreciate it. And otherwise, just have a great rest of your day. Bye.